Hello and welcome to another episode. I am Brian, the Unskilled Commander, and this is Possibilities, where I take three legendary creatures that could be commanders for a commander deck and go about looking at how I would probably build them, or what are the themes I would start to build them with. Just a thought experiment to see if I can find new commanders, new ideas, new fun ways to play the game. I appreciate you watching the episode. If you haven't already, maybe give the channel a subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Throw some likes around. But let's check out these commanders. This is going to be a little different of an episode in the fact that I am probably going to build these three. I've set them aside and started putting certain cards, getting the basics like Soul Rings and Arcane Signets and kind of things like that under them, getting them ready to eventually build them. So this is how I'm going to build these three decks in the future in the next coming weeks or months. Starting out with Ezuri Claw of Progress. Phyrexian Elf Warrior, it's a 3/3 that costs 4 mana to play. Whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control where X is the number of experience counters you have. This is a pretty straightforward commander, but even so, I thought it would be fun to build and try playing a couple times. For me, I'm going to fill it with all kinds of extremely low-cost green-blue creatures that hopefully have additional benefit abilities. Maybe they do something when they enter the battlefield. Most likely, the green ones are going to tap for mana, which will be helpful. Hopefully, some of them might have Death Touch, even though it's blue-green. Not as likely, but they might. Whatever cool abilities they can have. I want them to be cheap cost, so low mana values, and power 2 or less. They can have, hopefully they can have big toughnesses, so it's like a 2/3s and, 1/3s, things like that, so they can block decent. But the idea is get Ezuri out as fast as possible, so it's going to have a lot of mana ramp in there, of course, as well as always for green. Get him out early. Start dropping like 2, 3, 4 creatures per turn if you can. Lots of card draw. It's going to need card draw to refill the hand with creatures. That's going to be a big hurdle for me because pretty much every deck I have, the main weakness is it doesn't have enough card draw. But the idea is to drop 2, 3, 4 creatures per turn, getting 3, 4 experience counters, and then at the beginning of combat, putting counters on whatever creature has trample. So it'll be fine if, I've come across recently small creatures with trample that didn't quite make sense because it was like, oh, here's a 2/2 with trample. It's like, great, what am I going to do with a 2/2? But now, if I can dump 4 counters on it, suddenly it's a 6/6 with trample, and that's really good. But there won't be, I don't think there will be any kind of real surprises in the deck. I don't see any other real themes that would go along with it. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. It really just boils down to playing a bunch of creatures, getting the experience counters, getting the buffs, swinging out for combat damage. And I like the fact that it doesn't put the counters on Ezuri, because he's already going to be a target just because he's doing these cool effects. But I like the idea of being able to spread out the experience counters, or the +1/+1s rather, so I can put them on 2 or 3 different creatures over the course of a couple turns. So now I have maybe 3 5/5s with trample, or hopefully with blue I can get a bunch of flyers in there. So definitely putting counters on the flyers. A 1/2 flyer in blue, definitely a great thing to start dumping counters on. Plus, I do like the fact that it's experience counters, and those can't be taken away. So even if someone blows up Ezuri and puts it back to the command zone, I still have the experience counters because they don't go on him. It explicitly says you get an experience counter. So no one can do anything with those counters. I could proliferate them, I believe. So that's a cool sub-theme that I might put a few cards in for proliferate to up the experience counters, which will then help the combat damage. It doesn't matter how many times he gets blown up, as long as he's out for a couple batches of creatures coming in. Okay, cool. You blew him up 3 times. He's too expensive to cast. I still have 6 experience counters or 7 experience counters. Every combat something's going to go up by 7. That's a really cool effect. Past that, though, like I said, I don't see any major sub-themes that I can put in just yet. That'll have to be as I'm building the deck. Maybe like I said, flying might be a really good sub-theme to just go with Mostly if the creatures don't tap for mana, they are flyers. But I'm looking forward to building it and giving it a test run. Next up, and this is amusing because the next two are Doctor Who creatures again, and I already have 2 or 3 decks built around Doctor Who characters simply because the effects they have were interesting. I'm not a Doctor Who fan, I don't have anything against it, but I'm building these decks more just for the fun themes, really. So we've got the Rani, a Time Lord Scientist. It's a 3/4 that costs 4 mana to cast, but it's blue, red, black. So it's 3 colors, a little trickier to get out early, but they have, whenever the Rani enters the battlefield or attacks, create a red aura enchantment token named Mark of the Rani attached to another target creature. That token has enchant creature, and enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded. Whenever a goaded creature deals combat damage to one of my opponents, I investigate, which makes a clue token. Basically, I've never done anything with goad before. I've fought against goad decks, and they can be pretty troublesome. I know goad decks do have a main weakness, is that once you get down to one-on-one, they're useless, because now those creatures have to attack, and you're the only viable option. So that's where you have to really be tricky and be careful with goad decks. But I want to try it. I want to give it a go. And this is a goad deck that I haven't seen yet, obviously, because it's a relatively newer card, and she's pretty new. You're going to want creatures and effects, sorceries, instants that give goad to your opponents, in addition to her attacking, because it's only once. One time when she comes out, you can goad a creature, and then every time she attacks, you can put the enchantment on another creature that goads it. But you only attack once per turn. So you're not going to be goading the entire board. If someone's got a token deck, you're not really going to be doing much against that. So there'll have to be some kind of other sub-theme in there. Now with red, you can definitely put extra combat steps in there, as I do have in my Me the Immortal deck, because she gets combat triggers. So something like that, maybe put a couple of those creatures or enchantments that give you an extra combat step, so that the Rani can swing twice. However, it's only a 3/4, and if you don't have any openings, you can't go swinging, because then she'll just get destroyed. It won't destroy the enchantments, but turn 4 or 5, someone's got a 4/4 out, you really can't swing at them. And if they all have it, then you're kind of screwed, and you need other aspects of goad if you're going to build a goad deck. And as I said, I don't really have a ton of experience with it, so I'm going to have to do some research on what the best goad creatures are, or rather cards are, and how much they cost, because I don't want to spend a ton of money on a deck that might not be fun. So it'll be like, maybe buy some cheap goad creatures and just see how it goes. With 3 colors, it should be easier to have some kind of sub-theme on there. Again, it's blue and black in addition to the red. Besides the combat steps, obviously with red, you could totally put damage doublers in there, which of course would help. You could put some of the damage doublers that affect the entire board, because that would also benefit you. Normally, I try and not use those, because it'll always backfire on me. If I put something where it's like, oh yeah, you're totally going to double damage when anybody attacks, cool, I'll be going up against a deck that has all flying and I don't have flyers, and they just take me out really fast. So I try to keep them out of the decks. With her, it would be better, because you're goading everybody's creatures. You want them to have double damage. With black, maybe some sort of discard, or maybe some sort of graveyard recursion if that's important, to get the creatures that make extra combat, or the creatures that go to other creatures back on the field once they get blown up. That could be an idea. Blue could be about trying to control, propaganda, things like that, to maybe kind of stop them additionally from attacking you. If you don't have any kind of forms of goad just yet, pill afford a bit until you do. It's going to be tricky to build it right and fun. So again, I don't want to dump a ton of money into it early on. I'll build it with what I have, which isn't going to be a lot of goad aspects. I know I don't have much of that. So I'll have to buy some singles, go to my local game store, hopefully, go through like the 10-cent bins and, maybe even the dollar bins type thing. But it would be interesting to see how she functions. Last up is one I'm probably most excited to build. Unfortunately, it's not going to be that good, just because the limitation on the card type. So we've got the Dalek Emperor, and I've never sure about how to say that stupid villain name. Dalek, I think. The Daleks, yeah. So the Dalek Emperor is a 6/6. It has affinity for Daleks, which means every Dalek on your field makes it cost 1 less, and other Daleks you control have haste. At the beginning of each combat on your turn, each opponent faces a villainous choice. That player sacrifices a creature they control, or you create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace. Again, there's red, so hey, let's add some extra combat steps, because every combat you make your opponents either sacrifice a creature or they give you a 3/3 with menace. Have a couple of those per turn. You got yourself a decent Dalek army. Now, of course, he has to be on the field. That's the problem, and he's a 6-drop. That's the biggest part of all this, is that it's a 7. Sorry, 7 mana to cast the Emperor. So it's going to be tricky to get him out. I had a 7-drop commander with Toxtrol. It never was worth it because I could never get him out fast enough. Now, the fact that it has affinity can kind of help, but it's not artifact affinity. It's the creature type Dalek. So, and the main part is there's not a lot of Dalek cards because obviously they're just from the Doctor Who set. And I think there's only like 3 or 4 of them, really. And there's a couple others, but they have more colors in them because technically I guess you're supposed to put it under the creator of the Daleks as the main commander. He's got like 2 extra colors, I think. How do you have such a cool legendary creature and not make it the commander, especially since I got the cool full art foil? The way I'm going to try and get around this is Changeling. Changelings are every creature type. So that means they're going to be Daleks as well, whatever they are. However, Black and Red only have a handful of Changelings. I think if you put all of them together, actual Dalek cards that make Daleks, and Changelings, you're still only looking at like 10 to 12 creatures. I think I can bump that up a little closer to 20 with certain artifact creatures they come in as copies of, when this enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. It is one of those, in addition to its other types. So I know there's probably about 3 or 4 of those I can add in as well. But you're still looking at only 10 to 20 creatures that meet the requirement to even try and get him out faster. Obviously, I want to put Maskwood Nexus in here, so that makes all of your creatures all types. But that's one card. It can easily get blown up. It's just an artifact. I'm not going to build the deck around trying to find that one card. Which, maybe that's how it has to be built. I don't know, but I don't want to waste the time and resources within the deck to just go get one artifact to do that. But it'll be in there. So then I'll have to try and figure out other black-red creatures that have cool effects that at least buy me time or do a lot of damage or whatever. And of course, I'll need to put a lot of mana rocks in this to try and, again, speed up getting the Emperor out quickly so that you can start doing that whole villainous choice thing, because that's where you're going to get the real bulk of your Daleks. By going around, you got 3 opponents, each opponent does it. So on my combat, each opponent has to either sacrifice a creature or give me a 3/3 token with menace. And again, like I said, if you can squeeze out a extra combat card of some sort in there in that first, then now they're making 6 choices. I'm sure they'll sacrifice little creatures early on, but once they get their commander or important cards out, they're going to let you have the tokens. And then, if the Emperor does get blown up, because he has affinity for Daleks, you'll have more Daleks on the field, and you can compensate for that, the higher cost and the commander tax. So if you can get the deck going, it should be kind of like self-perpetuating and keep it going smoothly. I just really want it to work. I doubt it's going to, because of that major limitation. If it just had affinity for artifacts, the whole thing might be better. Or if they just took affinity off and just lowered it by 1 or 2 pips of colorless, that would be the same thing. That would probably be better, but I still want to try it. So that's how I would generally go about these decks. I don't think I would. I need to revive. I don't think there's any other real sub themes I would worry about for the Emperor, other than, again, trying maybe some of those extra combat steps, and then black, maybe some graveyard recursion or death touch or something like that. Cards that give everything menace or give everything whatever to in case he's not out and he's not making the tokens that have menace, you can give it to them anyway. Just some things like that, but nothing crazy. How would you go about building these decks? Are there any must-have cards that you think you would put in them? Would you even bother? Do you think these are bad commanders? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.